everyone. Today's guest is David Guilfoyle, better known as Guiley. And Guiley's going to show us how his career in the food industry has had many stops, and he's even had a significant break. But yet he could come back and have a wonderful career and make significant contributions in the food industry. If you are enjoying the Food Industry Insider, please follow and subscribe to the podcast. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We would really appreciate a 5-star review on both Apple Podcast and Spotify. This is a great zero-cost way to support our show. I'd like to welcome you today, Guiley.
Thank you, Maureen.
To our podcast. I'm looking forward to talking to you. Now,
Me too.
You're one of my rare people that went into the food industry on purpose.
Yeah.
On purpose. And you have had a lot of jobs. And I am not saying that in a bad way. I am saying that you have had an opportunity to try different things, work for different people, work for different size companies. And so your career and your life has not been boring at all. So I'd like to talk about what's happening, and you can start wherever you want. You want to start with what's happening now, or you want to start at the beginning? I'm going to let that all up to you.
Yeah. So, my beginning actually starts back in Ellsworth, Kansas at my mom, dad's Dairy Queen. So I started there when I was 2.5 years old. I was dipping dilly bars for my high chair at 2 years old. So I was helping my mother right away, and it's funny how you get your start in food. And, I grew up in the food business. So, at the Dairy Queens and just really loved doing that.
I love Dairy Queen. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
How long did your family own them?
51 years. We were franchisees.
How many Dairy Queens did you have?
2.
2?
2. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So you did more than just the 2-year-old dip and dilly bars. You did it for a long time.
Oh, I did for a very long time. So I grew up in it. My grade school years, junior high, high school, college, you name it. I was engrossed in the whole thing, so I went into college thinking I was going to go into business, and because I kind of wanted to get out of the food business a little bit. And so when I went to college, I was going to go for my bachelor administration. Or business administration, and the bachelor administration. So I thought that's what I was going to do, and I ended up not really liking it that much. And so my mother and father had suggested that maybe I should go to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. And so went there, loved it, and I got proper instruction on how you do cooking techniques and things like that, and really learned a lot at the CIA there in Hyde Park, New York. And while I was there, I ended up talking with one of the chef instructors, because he actually was telling me, well, I see you here on weekends in the bake shop, helping us out. Is baking really what you'd like to do? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And so he gave me a couple options. He said, well, one option is actually to go to the pastry school there at CIA, or you can go to this other school that's more technical focused and research focused, but it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's in the sticks. And I said, well, where is it at? He says, Manhattan, Kansas. And I started laughing, and he goes, well, why are you laughing? I said, because I'm from, my hometown is actually just an hour and a half away from Manhattan. I didn't even know that the school was there. And that's the American Institute of Baking. So went to school at AIB, and so I was there in the 19-week course.
Let's stop for a second.
Sure.
Guiley, I've never talked to anybody about the Institute. Tell us about it. Tell us what kind of courses, what kind of people go there. Tell me everything you can, because I'm serious. I've talked to a lot of food scientists, but I haven't talked to anybody that's gone to AIB. So here's your chance to tell us all about it.
It's really engrossed into how do you do formulation work for bakery. And it focuses in on functions and ingredients within bakery, but it also you focus on process. There is some scientific piece that happens with that, with serial science testing, and that actually was very interesting to me. So testing out flour and trying to understand what makes up flour, and and how can different flours be rheologically different. And so that was really so unique and so fascinating to me. So it delved into those areas. There was some management piece, but that wasn't as interesting as the scientific piece. So loved going through that at the school during the course.
That was a resident course, and it was just a short term. I mean, this is not, somebody does not have to go, this is not like going to college and have to go there for a year or something.
Right. So a lot of the industry used to send their folks or select folks in there, like supervisors and others, to learn about the baking process and functions of ingredients, the reason why it's so important, to get more in-depth knowledge into the baking industry. And there were some people who didn't grow up in the bakery industry, but wanted to learn more about baking, and that was me. So I was in with people who had actually worked in the baking industry for anywhere from 5 to 10 years, and so we all kind of helped each other out through the course there. So I stayed on the staff because I felt like I needed to, and worked for Ron Zelch there at AIB. And so I was a teaching assistant, and did that for a semester. And I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot just by doing testing while the students were in the lecture piece. I could actually do testing out in the lab. And so I did a lot of testing on my own to try to understand functions of ingredients better. And then there was an opportunity to move over to research. And so I took that opportunity to go work for Dr. Maureen and Guilley. And so I learned a lot more in the research side. And then that's where I really started taking off and really understanding where I really wanted to be.
So where'd you go from there?
I stayed on there and went back to school at K-State in food science, and decided to go the food science route because I wanted to learn about the bigger breadth of everything. That, and plus one of the instructors, she was a dietitian there at CIA, actually had come to visit me at AIB. She was in for a Dietetics Association conference there at K-State. And so she wanted to come up and see me. And so she was telling me, I think you should really go into food science. And she said, I've met some of the professors there, and I think that you would be a good fit. So I'm going to put you in contact with this professor. And so she did, and I got in there and started going through school at K-State to finish up my Bachelor of Science in Food Science.
Yeah. Was there any reason why you went to the food science and didn't get the bakery science? Because K-State's big on the bakery science or cereal science degree.
It is. I was more interested in food sensory analysis, and so I was able to focus my efforts more in the food science area in sensory analysis, and loved it.
Oh, okay.
So it took a whole different twist on how you work with food and with consumers, and so that's what was really more intriguing to me. I learned a lot, from the food science end of it, but the statistics, the psychology behind it all, it was just fascinating. So I went ahead and focused my efforts on food sensory analysis.
A lot of people think that sensory is more about just tasting and looking at and feeling the product. But I warn people when they talk to me about sensory, I say, you realize that you're going to have a lot of math. You're going to have statistics, because It really doesn't matter what it tastes like, what it feels like, or what it looks like. You have to measure all those things and what people like and dislike and where you're trying to get to.
Yeah, and there's psychology involved in this too, because you have to understand what actually triggers people to really like a product, and sometimes it goes back to their childhood, and it's so fascinating to see how that happens, and what are the different trigger points? How do you get inside a person's head to understand what actually works for them? And as far as a population, there's all sorts of different triggers that we go through, and it brings up all these sensations. And it's like, I remember that from my childhood, And I just love that. And I'm going to go back and buy that product again and keep on rebuying it.
Now, I'm one of those people who thinks about something they had from their childhood, and I'm like, oh, I really liked that. And then they go back and try it. Yeah. And like, ew. One was, I'll give you a quick story. One was, my family always went up to this cabin in the woods. We had a cabin trailer. And on the way, we stopped at this ice cream store every time. And we did that for, I don't know, like 10, 12 years. Well, then I grow up, go to college, get married. I move away. I come back and move closer, to this area. And I go on a camping trip with my children. And we are coming back from the camping trip, and I'm telling them a story about this ice cream store I used to go on the way home from our camping trip. And these friends had said, you should stop at this ice cream store on the way home. And we pull up, and I almost started to cry. It was the ice cream store. The one here I had been living. It was only like 20 miles north of me for like 5 years, and I didn't even know it. I called my mother. I'm like, why didn't you tell me this was here? And she's like, I don't know. And so I go in this store. It even has a screen door that slams a certain way. It's still painted green. I walk in, nothing's changed. I haven't been there since I was like 12 years old, but nothing's changed. And I go up to get White House ice cream. And White House ice cream is vanilla ice cream with maraschino cherries.
Oh.
And I can't wait. That's the only thing I ever got. Never even tried a different ice cream. So I order that. I get it. I walk outside and I taste it. I went, ew, this isn't, I don't even like this. I was like, whoever thought of putting maraschino cherries in vanilla ice cream? This isn't even any good. And I had to laugh because I had built up this whole thing that I was going to relive this childhood experience that was so special to me. And I've never eaten that ice cream again.
Oh, no. Oh.
We stop all the time. We still go there. But I have other flavors of ice cream because I thought, yeah, there's a childhood memory we're not going to relive. So I'm very careful. I'm very careful about my childhood memories. Sometimes remake a recipe and I'm like, oh, this tasted so much better when I was a kid.
And that happens sometimes, sometimes products actually change.
Mm-hmm.
So they've made modifications to it to change the flavor or the texture or whatever it may be. And there's a story behind that with when I was at Pizza Hut and we were doing some design work and actually trying to do some cost savings efforts with some of the products at Pizza Hut. And one of the sensory analyst people and one of the designers there said, it's death by 1,000 pinpricks because what may have rolled out in Pizza Hut way back when doesn't even look very similar or taste very similar to what it was before. And it's very true because, each little step actually, they say, well, it's still the same. Well, they didn't go back to the very original and try to measure against the very original because that's what people really remember is the very original. And I think that's been part of the issue with some of that. But we had a CEO at the time. He said, I remember when Pizza Hut was really, really grand as far as the food and the pizzas and everything else and the dough and it just doesn't seem that way anymore. And so we had to go back into the salt mines there in Hutchinson, get the formulations, the original formulations, bring them back up, and then we had work with our vendors to try to recreate the specifications for those, for all those ingredients. And it was fascinating because where we were before is what I remember as a child as well, and where we were at that time was completely different. And so it comes back to the death by 1,000 pinpricks.
Isn't that what some companies refer to as the gold standard? They'll have, instead of, and I guess this was explained to me, people will take the gold standard and they'll reformulate or change it, or it's gone, it's been a couple of years, and they go back and test it. But if you test it to last month or 6 months ago, you've moved from that standard. And if you keep doing that, you actually can move very far away. But some companies are very adamant. You have to compare it back to the original every time. So we never get more than 6 months or a year away from the original. Yeah. And I think that some companies aren't as good at that. You know, making sure that they test to. Isn't that the term they use, the gold standard? Go back to their original, one.
That brings up another story about when I was at Donato's. Somebody in purchasing said, "Well, we've never changed the stove, but it keeps on failing during the proofing process." I said, "Well, have you changed the dough at all?" "Oh no, it's never been changed." Well, come to find out, it actually had been, and that was their signature is the dough piece. So I went to one of the original guys who started up with Jim Grody, and so I went back to Donna's and I said, "Listen, I want to see what the original formulation is, and so we can take a look at it." He pulls out this little thin piece of paper that had been folded, and it was starting to dry out and discolor a little bit. And he said, "Well, here it is." And I said, "Well, we need to put that behind glass. We need to, have that somewhere where it can remain safe." And so then I went back to the original formulation. I said, "Well, everything's changed on this." And so we went back to the original, and the dough started popping the way it's supposed to with the fermentation and in the oven, and everything looked really, really good, and it tasted great. And I said, now we can actually kind of back off some of the original ingredients, but we have to keep track of the sugars and the salts and everything else, because they were switching out whole milk solids to whey, and well, they're not equal. And that's what they did was they switched out completely and made it equal, but they don't operate as equal. So you have to be very, very careful with some of these things.
I think that people don't realize that it is necessary to change ingredients sometimes. It could be cost, could be availability, but you can't just, you have to try your best to make sure that what the change you made didn't change the product. But
right.
The original, I use this example, the original Twinkie recipe is not like it is now, because some of those ingredients, some of those ingredients, we can't have anymore because they don't meet the FDA. And they have to make the right switch and make sure it's still a Twinkie. But, you just, there's some ingredients out there we're just not using anymore. Yeah. Now, I noticed in your list of companies you've worked for that you worked for Anheuser-Busch. That's not a baking company.
Anheuser-Busch is a brewing company, but at the time they owned Campbell Taggart, which is a baking company. And because Anheuser-Busch made yeast, and they thought that they could use their yeast in the bakery company called Campbell Taggart, and then that also included Marico. So Campbell Taggart was a fairly large size regional bakery company, and fairly decent size actually. And so Anheuser-Busch owned them, and then we also had Eagle Snacks. I don't know if you remember Eagle Snacks or not, but I worked on some of the Eagle Snack stuff, and then for the cheddar snack, actually helped create that one, and then worked on the pretzel for that. But on the bakery side, I did a lot of work in frozen dough for them, and so that's what I did for about 4.5 years with them. So it was fun. I enjoyed working for Anheuser-Busch. I loved the culture there. I had one beer project to work on, but it wasn't really enough to keep me around when they downsized the whole thing. But the culture there was that, instead of saying, well, here's your papers, go, they said, work here. You've got a couple of months to figure out what you want to do, and then we can help you with while you're looking, we can help you as well. But I still had a job all the way through until I was able to make the switch over. So. But I had 3 different offers coming out of Anheuser-Busch, which was amazing. I had one with Nestle Frozen, one with Starbucks, and then Pizza Hut. And I went with the Pizza Hut opportunity, and that was great. So every step along the way in my career, and as you said, I job hopped around quite a bit. Some of it was, my doing. Some of it was actually because the company that I was working for all of a sudden shut up, and that was it. So I lost my job. So So there are different situations where, you may be working for a company you just absolutely adore and love, but you may end up being downsized out and or right sized, whatever you want to call it. And then you end up finding an even better job down the pathway. So, people who are growing up in the food industry shouldn't be discouraged when something like that happens, because the next thing you know, you're going to get a call from somebody and they're going to say, "Come work for me." So, and that's happened a couple different times for me as well.
Yeah, I think that you've pointed out something that people should pay attention to, is that especially when they write resumes or they fill out LinkedIn or whatever. And I know LinkedIn doesn't give you enough choices. They kind of force you to go and fill in the blank, for what they have on their drop down menu. But people will assume that when you work for a company, you must work for whatever their flagship product is. So I'll get resumes from people that says they work for Kraft, and it's Kraft Heinz now. So they're really in the Heinz part, not the Kraft. Or I think, I test people all the time. I go, okay, it's Kraft. Tell me what product you think of. And I could have 6 people blurt out 6 different things, because Kraft means something different to every person. So an important thing is that you having Anheuser-Busch on there instead of Campbell-Taggart. People go, oh, he worked for a beer company, but no, he didn't. So it's like bad assumptions. The food industry, when I started in this 30 years ago, companies didn't change hands. They didn't change names. They didn't. Yeah. Everybody stayed where they were, stayed put, and carried on. But right about the 30-year mark, I'd say right about the middle of the 90s, people started buying each other out and start making new divisions, and it went crazy. So when I asked somebody what company they work for, and they have on their LinkedIn, like you did, Anheuser-Busch, but it wasn't Anheuser-Busch, it was Campbell-Taggart. But you don't have a space to put Campbell-Taggart because that company doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I actually worked for Anheuser-Busch, and I worked in corporate research development, which is really the think tank for all the companies that we owned. Campbell-Taggart is one of them. So I supported Campbell-Taggart in the technological area because of my baking expertise. And that's the reason why Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah, it's like assuming if you work at Kraft, you must be on cheese. But me, I go to Miracle Whip and salad dressing when someone says Kraft. So you get different thoughts on different products. So you did that. So, and that obviously that baking led you to Pizza Hut. And then after that, you went to Smucker's just for a year. What went on at Smucker's?
I really didn't care for the culture at Pizza Hut because it was changing quite a bit, and it was not really part of what I really wanted to do. And it just wasn't as technical as what I was thinking it would be. I enjoyed doing all the commercial shoots and all the photography work, because that's what I got to work on as well. With all the new products that I helped develop, and then other products as well. So I excelled at that piece, and I love doing still photography with the photographers, and then working on commercial shoots that show your product actually out on the marketplace, which was absolutely fun to watch. But I was just kind of missing something. I really, like I said, I didn't care for the culture because it was kind of a churn and burn type of culture, and I wanted something that was going to be a little bit more steady. And so I went to Smucker's and thinking that I would be more in a steady environment, and it was. But they hired me with the premise of, well, we're going to get into baking as well, but we don't really understand it, and we need your expertise. Well, they didn't really do that. Even through the entire year. It wasn't until after, while after when they got into Uncrustables that they really started getting into the baking piece. But I had an opportunity to move back to Kansas and work for Coke Industries, and on a project for Coke and Same Foods. And so I was able to transfer some of that knowledge from what I learned at Smucker's on preserving jams and jellies and other items back into the bakery industry, and then use that for the next position I had, which was at Cookie and Seam Foods. So
now at Smucker's, I was recruiting for those jobs at the time, and we kept getting turn downs from bakery people. And I told them, I said, no bakery person wants to come here unless you have an oven, you have flour, you have some shortening. I said, they want yeast. They want to bake. Yeah. There isn't a bakery person out there who wants to sit at a desk. And they said, well, we just want their knowledge right now. I said, I don't care. You have to let them bake or they're not coming. Yeah. And they actually put the jobs on hold for a year before they went back out to look for people because they wanted to make sure. And I don't remember if you went there before or after they had all the ovens and all those things, because they were taking on Martha White at the time and taking on the interstate brands, the Pillsbury brands. Basically, they were taking on the Pillsbury brands. So were you there for the Pillsbury brands, or did they come after you?
No, that's way before me.
So they did have the Pillsbury brands? Yeah, but they had wanted to hire all these bakery people, but they weren't going to have them bake. But you can't do that. They won't stay. They won't work here. And they were convinced that it would be fine. And Smucker's is another one of those companies where people, if I ask them what does Smucker's make, they all say jam and jelly.
Yeah.
And that is the smallest bit of their profit center. They make more money off of coffee.
Oh, I know.
And pet food. And they used to own Crisco, but they got rid of Crisco a couple of years ago. But they make more money off of coffee and pet food than they do of any jam or jelly, but they're known for jam or jelly.
Yeah, they now are making the most money off of Uncrustables.
Oh, yes, the finished product.
Yeah, so I actually was there when they were just in initial development of Uncrustables, and the engineer was asking me, well, what would you choose for equipment? And so I told him, and so the processing equipment and things like that. And he didn't want to listen to me, so I said, no, that's fine. However you want to do it, that's fine. But this is how I would set up the bakery for that.
Now, I went to visit them after the bakery was set up, and I'm a recruiter. I don't work in the food industry. I don't know anything, about food plants as far as like actually working there, because we don't. That's what we do. And my husband and I go, and it's summer, and it's like 90 degrees out. So we show up in shorts. And we told them we were coming by. This wasn't going to be like put our suits on and come in for a professional visit. They insisted we could just come as we were. Well, they missed the come as we were, meant long pants, closed-toed shoes, no jewelry. So we had to go back out, change our clothes, come back in. And we got to go through the whole plant of making the Uncrustables, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then at the end, this was the best part. They gave us some, okay? But I will tell you, begrudgingly, I thought that was really weird. You're throwing thousands away because they're not perfectly cut, but you were afraid to give us some. But they gave us some. And I took them out to my kids, and they were so delicious, freshly made, not having been frozen yet. They were amazing. So, but that was one plant I did get to see, was the Uncrustables.
Yeah, that's the one in Scottsville.
Yeah. So you left there, and then you went to do you say Koch Industries?
Yep,
how
Koch
they say
Industries.
It?
Yep.
Okay.
KOCH.
And these are owned by the Koch brothers that are the very wealthy guys who.
Yes. Oil was part of their business, but they also had a farming and ranching business as well. So they were heavy into oil, of course, but they were heavy into and fractionated of distillates there. But they were heavy into ranching and agriculture, which is more based on wheat farms that they had. So they actually had their own lineup of barbecue and other stuff that they produced out of their cattle, which was amazing. So it was a wonderful experience at Koch. I really enjoyed working for there, even though it was a year and a half there. But
well, what products did you work on?
So it was on par baked pizza crusts that were shelf stable.
Oh, okay.
And So a couple other brothers came in and said, "Hey, if you invest in this, we know people who will come to buy the product." And that didn't exactly happen, but it was a fun exercise.
Do they still do it? Do they still make those?
No.
The only interesting thing I have to say about Coke is that one of the Koch brothers lived behind me.
Oh, really?
He was the youngest brother, and his house is still there. It's now in it's the estate, and they have a management group that manages. They're not renting or anything. They're making it into like a museum. But he was the youngest one of the Koch brothers. He was the one that never married, who was in the arts, and it's so the world's largest collection of artwork is in the mansion that's behind my house. I've never been there, but he died like, I'm going to say 5 years ago, maybe. He was pretty old. And he was paid off to leave the family. So he was never involved in this, in any of these endeavors that you did. He had left the family business years and years. I mean, like 40 years ago. So he wasn't in it. So you left there. You said that they closed the business. Did they lay you off?
Yep, they laid us all off. So they came in one day and said, the numbers just aren't matching up, and that's it. We're going to mothball the whole thing. And so they told us you have 2 hours to pack up your desk, and then that was it. So some cool stuff though that happened while we're there. I was able to transfer some of the preservation knowledge from Smuckers into what I was working on there at Coke. The Coke Instinct Foods piece was that. So they hired me, and then my first day I start there, and 2 hours later I'm being pulled into this meeting saying we're having problems with mold, and it's the products aren't meeting shelf life. Like, I thought this thing was a done deal, that you'd done all this work to make sure that the product was stable through that shelf life. And my boss goes, "Well, there are a few issues," and he said, "That's the reason why you're here." It's like, oh, thank you.
Did you figure it out?
Oh yeah. We, it took several of us to figure it all out, but I was just brand new, so I had no idea that there was all this other going on in the background, and they're saying, "Well, do you know of anybody that knows how to preserve better the crust?" And I said, "Well, we can call this one person from K-State and Dr. Fung and Dr. Daniel Fung," and I said, he should be able to give us some ideas as far as where the touch points are for what we need to correct. And so they said, "Oh yeah. So we'll bring him in." Okay, fine. So we meet with him, and he's going through and he's auditing, and he goes, "Well, here's some problems," and so he helped us out a little bit. Still was seeing a lot of issues. Well, the plant manager at the time said, "Well, I'm going to throw out all this product that's in the warehouse because it's going moldy. We're going to send it up to the pigs." And I said, "Before you do that, I just want to record the packaging and take a look at the packaging, because if there's something wrong with why the product is going moldy, it's probably starting with the packaging first." And so I started out doing it by myself, and then I recruited one of the QA people in to help me with it. We went through about 2,000 packages, and we were recording all the information on. I was looking at the seals on every one of the packages, looking at which ones were moldy, which ones weren't. Collected all that data, and Coke, the brothers who were doing this whole thing with the pizza crust, bar-baked pizza crust, they were going back to the Coke team saying, "Hey, we need more money, and because we want to put in this laminar airflow, we want to do these different lights to help keep the microbial count down, all that sort of stuff." Well, as Coke was about ready to give them about $7 million. I had actually figured out the whole thing by looking at all the packages and figured out there's holes in packages and there's inclusions in the packaging seals that's allowed oxygen into the product. And so I went back to my counterpart at Coke Industries and said, listen, I think all we have to do is just make good sealed packages. That's it. And he goes, what? And I said, here's all my data. He goes, okay, we're going to crunch the numbers a little bit more. We've got a statistician who can actually help us out with this. And sure enough, it came down to the package seals were not being made correctly. And there were holes in some of the packages at the bottoms and all that stuff. And so the $7 million was, kiboshed. And, but we were able to I was able to help save Coke Industries from making a $7 million mistake out of that whole thing.
So you're thinking, at this point, I should have said to them, if I can save you $7 million, will you give me one? And then you tell them the idea so that they give you $1 million for saving them 6. Right? Right. That's the way it should work. So, I was, so the way that Coke Industries runs their whole employee review process, it's done on a monthly basis, not at the end of the year. So it's done on a monthly basis. And so you're reviewed every month and you're bonused every month based on that review. So I got heavily bonused during that next 3 months. It wasn't $1 million, but I got heavily bonused on what I was able to contribute and helping them save them from making a $7 million mistake. So it was, wow.
That's what I learned a lot about is you have to speak up, and you have to be able to say, I know I'm right. And here's my data and I know what I need to do to make the correction for it. It may make other people upset with you, but I know I'm right, and I think this is what's better for business. So
you left there and you went to Donato's Pizza. How'd you get that job?
So I was without a job for about 2.5 months. And so when Coke NCM Foods closed down, and we mothballed the whole thing, I was without a job for about 2 months, and I was getting worried that, because I was sending out feelers to other companies and sending out resumes and all that stuff. I was getting worried that nothing was going to happen for me, and I thought that was like the end of my career. So I was living at home with my parents and thinking, oh God, this is going to be the end of me. So
you're going to go back to Dairy Queen and do some ice cream cones. Did you do Dairy Queen?
I did just for a short moment, but I had an old boss who called me up and said, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" I said, "Well, I'm without a job, but I'm looking for something." And she goes, "Let me get a hold of Dave Buns, who was our boss at Pizza Hut. Let me get a hold of Dave Buns. I think we have an opportunity for you." Cool. And so he called me up right away, and he goes, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me." I said, "Yeah, I remember you, Dave." And so, and I'm actually driving through Kansas City at the time. I'm trying to take this phone call, and I've got him on speakerphone. Of course, my parents were with me in the car, and I'm talking to him, and I said, "So, what is this? Where is it at? And what is it that you're looking for?" And he goes, "Well, I need somebody with your experience that has pizza, knows how to build pizzas and knows how the ingredients work and all that stuff for dough and all that. And I need somebody that I can trust in doing it correctly." I said, "Fine, I can do that." I said, "Where is it at?" He says, "It's in Columbus, Ohio." I was like, "What?"
Did your mom say anything?
My parents were just looking at me, and I was like, this is how it's going to go. He says, "I'm going to go ahead and set up an interview with you. Have you come in and interview with us this next week? Are you available?" I said, "Absolutely." So I had my bags packed, a couple or a bag packed with a couple changes of clothes in there, And so I interviewed there, and then Dave took me out to dinner that night. And he said, "So what do you think?" And I said, "Yeah, I think this is fun and interesting. I think it's really, really cool what you're trying to accomplish, which was it's trying to take a regional concept and prep it for globalization from the point of view of McDonald's." And so I said, "Dave, I think it's a nice place, and I like the people." And he goes, "That's great to hear, because this is your first day." I was like, "What?" He says, "Yeah, you're now on the payroll."
Wow.
He said, "This is your first day." And I said, "I don't have any extra changes. Well, I only have one extra change of clothes. That's it." I said, "What am I going to do?" And he goes, "Don't worry, there's washers and dryers somewhere, I'm sure. So we'll get you taken care of." And he said, "By the way, tomorrow you're actually flying out to Tulsa, Oklahoma to talk to a vendor about dough." I said, "Okay."
And when did you discuss salary?
We didn't. He said, "That's it." And I mean, what they eventually told me, they said, "Well, this is your salary." I was like, "Well, I love that." It was way more than what I was ever making before, and so they treated me well.
Oh, well, good.
They really wanted me on board, and so they made sure that I was going to be satisfied with everything. So
now I have to stop you for a second, because when I met you, and I was talking to you about different jobs, you told me black and white, without a doubt, you had to be near the beach. You had to be near water. You had to be on a coast, West Coast or East Coast, but you had, because you wanted to surf. And I was like, what? And it took a couple job changes of yours for me to call you up and say, "Okay, this dream of being at the beach, this is a pipe dream. You are lying to yourself and you're lying to me. And if you look, you've never been near the beach."
I have. So when I had the opportunity to go from Columbus, Ohio down to Miami, and so I took a position with Burger King. So good transition there. I love that.
I will never forget. I even have your old file where it's written on there, "Only will consider beach opportunities." I wonder how many jobs I missed giving you because I thought they were near the beach. Be careful what you wish for, right?
So I think it's probably because I was stuck in Oroville for a bit.
I don't know where this was. I'd have to go back and look what year it was. But okay, so why, after 3.5 years, did you leave Donato's Pizza? Tell me about Donato's Pizza, what you made there, and then what eventually led you to leave.
Yeah, so I actually created their thick crust. I don't think they're selling anymore, but I created their thick crust pizza for them. So I did all that work. Found the vendor to work with them on that, and they were based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and so I was able to do a lot of work on that crust, and we were trying to expand the menu enough to make it better for everybody. So thick crust I created for them, created the whole proofing system for them, because instead of doing hot proofing, we went to a cold proof system. So I created that whole system on cold proofing, and they were thinking originally, well, this can't be done. Well, I showed them how to do it, and that goes back to my Anheuser-Busch days, and as well as Smucker's. So I showed them how to do that piece, and we have a patent on that. And then I worked on the original crust. That's where went back to the original recipe for it, and I said, well, we need to keep that somewhere else that is protected better, because that's like history. And so I got them back to something closer to the original, but not as costly as the original. So, but I was able to work through all that with understanding how do you formulate with the different ingredients to make that happen. So, then I just worked on with the other chef there, Stephanie Vandenberg, and she and I worked on a lot of different new news product lines for Donato's, and it was really a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I got to travel a lot, and so I had an office in Columbus, Ohio, but I had another office over in Munich, Germany. So I was traveling back and forth to Munich, Germany, and trying to get the Munich Donato's restaurants up and running. But I also had to help with getting the ingredients selected for that and working with the vendors to make sure that the ingredients were actually correct.
How many restaurants did they have?
They got up to, I think it's like 3 or 4 restaurants they eventually got to, but the very original one was on Riegerstrasse, just right across the street from the Polliner Brewing plant there. So that was fun.
And how many restaurants did they have in the United States?
At that time, I think they were like 186 restaurants. We had, of course, the Columbus area. We had Cleveland, down in the Cincinnati area, and then all the way down in Atlanta. And we were just expanding into Atlanta area. And so,
are they still around?
Yeah, they're growing. They're growing again.
Yeah, because we don't have them in Pittsburgh, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, they're expanding. You can actually find them in Red Robins, in some of the Red Robins that are available. So you can go in and get a Donato's pizza there. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I will have to look at that next time.
So they did some co-branding things. So Tom Kraus, who was our chief marketing officer, I loved working with him, and it was a lot of fun doing like commercial shoots and things like that with him, and really understanding how do you take that regional concept and prep it for expansion. And he had a lot of great ideas there.
Now, since this was one of those companies where you had to keep kind of going back to the original, how do you handle changing ingredients and trying to keep the taste, keep the integrity of the product? That's a challenge. And it took a lot of iterations in working with your vendors to get those iterations made correctly. And the original sausage meat was actually raw. It was baked onto the pizza. So because of food protection stuff and all that, we had to switch it over to a sausage that was actually pre-cooked, so we wouldn't have any issues with cross-contamination. And so we were able to do that while I was there as well. So working with the different vendors, we were able to get the texture similar and get the product to look really, really good. Were they using raw dough or were they using par-baked crust? No, raw dough. So it was frozen, and then we would slack it out on the pans, and then it'd go into the cold ferment system. And so we went from only having 4 hours of shelf life time on that dough to having right around 36 to 40 hours of usable shelf life of that product. That's the one thing I'm really terrible in making is bread. I've never figured it out. And I made my first sourdough loaf of bread last week. My daughter-in-law coached me through it all the way, and I made my first loaf, and it came out beautiful. Oh, good. But I don't know if I can do it again. So we will see. So what happened to Donato's? Why'd you leave there? Yeah, I thought it was about time for me to go. You know, I'd been with them for three and a half years, and so I thought, well, I need a new experience. And so a recruiter had called me up and said, I think I've got the perfect job for you. I was like, okay. And she goes, you're going to love where the location is. It's down in Miami. I was like, what? And went down there for my interview. I actually did the phone interviews while I was in New York City working on a commercial shoot. And so they wanted to bring me in and do the formal interview. And at that time, I actually had long hair. So I had my hair pulled back. I didn't have time to go from New York City back to Columbus, Ohio, to get my hair cut and all that sort of stuff. So I just went as is, and I had my hair pulled back, and it was so funny because they kept on staring at my head the whole entire time. They really weren't looking at my eyes; they were looking at my hair.
and were fascinated with that whole thing. So, but I got through the interview process, and they hired me, rather quickly, and so it was so funny because my boss there was Peter Gibbons, and he's just fun. I just love the man, and he said, okay, when you're in the kitchen, the test kitchen, and you see the CEO hide behind something, I was like, okay, what's that about? And so I had done a lot of the baking. I was in charge of all the bakery stuff for Burger King, so that would include the hamburger buns, anything that was baking based. I had a hand in making sure to manage the quality for that, but also just looking at the formulations and trying to improve what they were getting already. And so I happened to be in the test kitchen, and I had my hair pulled back, and the CEO, Brad Bloom, actually caught a look at me, and he came searching for me. He goes, I want to talk to you. And I said, okay, what's the matter? He goes, I love what you're doing with our bakery program and what you're able to accomplish. And everybody's been trying to hide you from me because you have long hair. I was like, well, okay. So I just had to laugh. And he goes, I think you're doing a terrific job, and it doesn't matter whether you have long hair or not.
Now, was it long enough that you could put it in a ponytail?
Yeah.
You're just a little too far out there for him, huh? Well, I heard this funny quote one time, and I don't remember who was CEO at the time because I don't remember what year it was, but the CEO was a health nut. And they were commenting about, why do you work for Burger King? Because that's not healthy food.
That's Brad Bloom.
Okay. And he said, and they said, what do you think about being number 2? Because McDonald's was always number 1. And he goes, oh, I love it. He said, every food crisis out there and everything bad for you, they blame it on McDonald's, and we get to do whatever we want. And I thought that was funny. They could do it because he was talking about, I don't know at the time what, like a double Whopper, how many calories, how much fat was in it. It could kill you.
Yeah.
And he said, I would love to make it healthy, but they won't eat it. So if you're trying to make money, do it the way you have to. But he said everything bad in fast foods blamed on McDonald's, and we just kind of fly under the radar.
There's a picture of me and Brad Bloom. It went into like USA Today and all these other publications. So I've been on the newspaper end of the whole thing, and so it's a picture of me standing there with Brad Bloom. I've got the hamburger with the bun, and he has the hamburger with the lettuce wrapped around it because it was the low carb phase that was going through. So fortunately enough, I'm the one pointing at the bun because the bakers that I was working with for us got a little upset with that picture.
I always thought that Burger King was the best one for anybody who wanted to think about trying to be keto or at least low carb, because their hamburgers were the only ones I knew that were good without a bun. And I can't remember what they used to call it. If you went through the line and you asked for it a certain way, they knew that meant no bun. I don't know if you asked for the low carb version or whatever, but they put it in a container with everything except the bun and handed you a knife and a fork. And other fast food restaurants would try to give it to you wrapped in their paper, and they were not being kind to you at all about not wanting a bun. But Burger King put it in a plastic container with it, like the salad container.
Yeah.
And you could ask for the double Whopper. No, I would say double Whopper, no cheese, extra lettuce, and basically add a hamburger salad. And it was wonderful. So Burger King was one of those. So you left Burger King and you went to Interstate Brands. I don't think anybody knows what that is unless they're in the food industry. So tell us about Interstate Brands.
So Interstate Brands it used to be the largest baking company in the United States. And so they had Wonder Bread and Hostess and Dolly Madison. So those were some of the big brand labels that were underneath that, under IBC. So Interstate Brands was actually the recruiter who kept on contacting me, and I kept on kind of ignoring him. And he said, you need to talk to me. And I said, all right, I'll talk to you. And because I really didn't want to leave Miami, and I was enjoying it there. He said, well, I'm not the one actually is requesting you. It's actually who's going to be your future boss, Teresa Cogswell. She keeps on harping about you. You need to come work for her. It's like, okay. And she was the VP of R&D, regulatory, and consumer affairs. And so I said, okay, I'll entertain the thought. So I talked with her for a bit.
Well, how did you know her? How did she know you?
When I worked at AIB, and she's kind of followed my track a little bit, and so I knew her kind of at AIB when she was on the advisory board there, and so I kind of knew her. I didn't know her real well, but she kind of kept track of where I was at, and so she had an opportunity for me as a director of
Sounds like she was stalking you.
She was.
You had a stalker.
She goes, I've been tracking you. that was during the interviewing process, and with when she and I went to lunch, she goes, I've been tracking you. I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, they came back.
Creepy.
Yeah. Oh, I just love her. You know, she laughs a lot, and we just kind of made fun of the whole thing. But so she and I talked, and I said, okay, I'm willing to, entertain the thought of coming out and interviewing with you. And then it takes me back to closer to family here in Kansas City. So I thought, well, okay, I can, entertain the thought. So, and she goes, well, understand that we're under bankruptcy, but, we'll make the deal okay for you. And hopefully we can get ourselves out of bankruptcy. It's like, okay, that's a little iffy, but I'm willing to
That's scary.
take it. So I'm willing to take it and see what happens here. So I interviewed, they liked me. And so I got the position as a director of bread and rolls. So in R&D. So
now, when you left Burger King, what was your position?
I was manager of menu management for them. I focused a lot of my efforts were on bakery, but also I worked on breakfast concepts or breakfast category itself, and then also on desserts. So before I was there, they didn't have much in dessert land itself. So the frozen pie was pretty much it that they had. So those Hershey pies and other pies that they had there, that was pretty much it. That's all they had. So I talked them into going to soft serve and using their current mix that they were using for the shakes. I said, if we buy a smaller machine, then you can actually get into soft serve. So I'm bringing back my Dairy Queen days there. So I showed them how to get in. So I showed them how to get into soft serve, and so we talked the franchisees into it, and they're still doing real well with soft serve.
So what did Burger King say when you told me you were going to leave?
Weren't real happy, but they understood, and so I kind of left the door open that if something should happen, then maybe I could get back.
Well, that was nice. That was nice. They were fine with that.
It was iffy going into IBC, knowing that they were in bankruptcy and things were just kind of, on edge there. But I was able to accomplish a lot there in the bread category, and then the director of sweet goods actually left, so I took over that whole thing. So I was director over all that R&D, and learned quite a bit from the people, and we actually launched out some really good products in the whole scheme of things. And then Teresa left, and so then that kind of thrust me into being the VP then. So I was the interim VP for a bit with IBC.
Whatever happened to the bankruptcy?
They went bankrupt. I had already left, and so I think it was just about a year later they just declared bankruptcy, and that was it. So they just kind of like closed up everything, and that was it. So
did you work on the Hostess brand?
I worked on Hostess, and I worked on Wonder Bread, and we had another one that was what was it? Nature's Pride. That's what it was. Nature's Pride. So we actually developed a counterpart to the Nature Zone.
This little thing with Hostess was one of those things that made me laugh about what people, the general public, do not understand about the food industry. Mm-hmm. So they announced that Hostess is out of business. And everybody goes crazy. Where are they going to get their Twinkies? Where are they going to get their Hostess? And do you remember they were selling them on eBay for like $1,000 for a box of Twinkies? Yeah. And I'm just sitting back and I keep telling everybody, even though I don't eat Twinkies, don't worry about it. This is just a brand. Somebody else is going to buy it. They're going to pick it up. It might take a month. It might take 6 months, but it's not as if Twinkie and Hostess is going to ever, leave the earth. And I was laughing. I was telling people, do not buy a Twinkie off of eBay for $1,000. We know they have a shelf life of about 10 years, but still, do not buy a Twinkie off of eBay. And then I don't even know how many months it was before they were back up and, running again.
It's like 5 or 6.
But was that the most hilarious thing you ever saw?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I saw some hilarious stuff on the inside of while I was there. And so when I was the interim VP, the whole thing with the trans fats. And so everybody had to lower their trans fats down, and in the Walmart and others were saying, hey, you have to lower the trans fat on all your products. And so that was quite a, run through trying to get everything switched over. And it just took a very coordinated effort to get that done. And kind of a funny story out of that whole thing is that the VP of Ops actually came into my office and goes, I need you to sign this paper. And I was like, okay. I said, what is it? And he goes, well, we want to change out the frying fat for the donuts and Madison Gems. I said, did you do any testing on this? Well, no, we just need to change it. I was like, you need to do the testing on it, make sure that, it doesn't fail. Because I said, donuts and the gems are pretty much our crown jewels here. That's what's paying to keep the lights on. So yeah. I said, you cannot disrupt that piece by just switching out frying fats. And so he started screaming at me and at the top of his lungs, and the spit's coming at me. That's how angry he really was. He goes, I'm going to go talk to your boss. And I said, go for it. So I called up my boss at that time and I said, Rich is coming up to talk to you, and he goes, oh no, I can hear him. And I said, this is what it's all about. And I said, he wants me to sign this paper and, for changing out the frying fat. And I told him, we need to do proper testing, all that stuff, because I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. So in the end, we went ahead and tested out 3 different frying fats. So the one that the ops people actually picked out failed the consumer testing over shelf lifetime, and 2 others that we selected actually made it through. And one of them that did the best actually didn't. The company who was selling it to us, the frying fat, said, well, we can't supply you with everything. So we also had the alternate supplier then that could actually do it for us. And so usually when I do testing for products, I always try it, and I do 3 tests because I know that one of them may have a chance of failing, and I still want some options there. So I always test in 3s. I
think trans fat's one of those things that people talk about, like, oh, this doesn't have any trans fats. And I don't think people know what trans fats are or why we shouldn't have them and why we have them to begin with, So go through some trans fats. Like, why did we get rid of them? And what did you replace them with?
They've been found to clog up our arteries, which is not good. So they were found to clog up our arteries, and that was the main thing. So the lowering the trans fat content will actually allow you to eat the food without it causing the blockages in your heart and in other places throughout your body. So that's really what it came down to.
So what is a trans fat? Is like lard a trans fat, or like what has trans fats?
All fats have some bit of trans fat to them, but at lower levels. So the natural ones have a little bit of it in there, but it is not completely. They're at such a low level, it really doesn't register that well. But there are some fats that were hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated actually, and that have a higher amount of trans fats in them. So, frying oils, like for French fries and for sweet goods and things like that, which we all just love. And so those that were fried in partially hydrogenated oil actually had a high amount of trans fats in them to keep them flowable, but also still have fry life. So it helps with the stability of that frying oil as well.
So we're talking about like Crisco. Crisco was high in trans fats.
Yes, and it might have been. I'm not sure.
The original one was.
Was it? Okay, I can't remember.
That's what they call it. Hydrogenated oil. That's the name of it.
There's fully hydrogenated, which is different from partially hydrogenated.
How is that different?
Partially hydrogenated is more flowable. Fully hydrogenated is actually solid like Crisco. So I don't think that it was actually, Crisco was actually had a very high trans content to it.
Okay, you have to explain this to me like I'm 4 years old. Isn't all oil flowable? Like, why would we have to have
So there's plastic and then there's flowable oils. So there's the plastic piece is fully hydrogenated, and then regular, unhydrogenated oil would be, flowable. And so it would be like your vegetable oils and things like that. When you do kind of a partial of that, somewhere in between both fully hydrogenated and then just regular oil, then you get into this area of higher trans fats. And it has to do with the esterification of how that happens. And I can't remember all of the chemistry behind it. But anyway, when you get to the partial, which allows the oil or the fat to be flowable, it's semi-solid, I guess you call it. It's not fully hydrogenated, which is a solid fat. It's a flowable fat, but it has the protections of a fully hydrogenated fat, but it also has the flowability as well.
So if you said lard doesn't have very many trans fats?
All natural fats actually have some degree of trans fats in them, but they're, like I said, they don't really register. So butter, oil, or lard, some of the other natural fats, from animal sources may have a certain amount of trans fats, but they just occur naturally. But when you process an oil to become partially hydrogenated, it does create a lot of trans. So it's there's cis and then there's trans. And so trans actually is what causes a lot of the blockage in the arteries.
The other thing they like to get rid of is saturated fat, right?
Saturated fats, lard and butter are high in saturated fats.
So they try to get rid of those, though, or they haven't? That's not a concern.
They're not great. So even coconut oil, I think, I'm pretty sure coconut oil and some palm fats have a high amount of saturated fats to them. Not great for the heart either, but it's better than the trans fat itself. So trans fat is really, it's bad. So, but saturated is not as bad, but it's still bad for you. And you have to limit the intake of saturated fats as well.
I was in Costa Rica in October, and we were driving past, one of those tours, driving past all these palm trees in perfect rows, and it was what they got from, this is farms for palm oil. And they said something interesting. They said that they manufacture everything, the palm oil, and refine it, and they send it out of the country because it's illegal to consume palm oil in Costa Rica.
Really?
Because it's so bad for you. They said it's just health-wise is the worst thing. So Costa Ricans will not consume palm oil that they ship out of the country. And I said, well, who do you ship it to if it's so bad you guys won't eat it? He goes, to the United States. Yeah.
It's all for us.
Wait a minute. If it's so bad for us, why are we consuming it.
So that and coconut oils or coconut fats are also, so highly saturated as well. But we still eat them, and they're good. They make great fried products.
Did your job there end because of the bankruptcy?
I went ahead and left because things were really getting iffy, and I just really did not want to be there anymore. So after a year and a half, I said, I've had enough of the instability. And so my mom and dad were aging. I said, I probably ought to go help my parents with the Dairy Queens for a while. And so that's what I did. I worked back at the Dairy Queens and took over the business for them and the day-to-day operations, all that sort of stuff. Because my parents were aging and they really need help. So I helped them out, with that. And finally, I think it was like 2016, I told my mom and dad, I said, I think I really want to go back to corporate life. You
spent a lot of years with your parents. How long did you spend doing that for your parents?
7 years, maybe 7 or 8 years.
Is that the half-baked innovations?
Yeah. So I did consulting work in meantime. So I did consulting work, had some different things that I did with consulting, worked for some different customers, and then worked at the Dairy Queens to help them out too. So
now, did you notice in the course of all of this conversation, all the companies you've worked for, did you notice that Hostess wasn't it purchased by Smucker's? I
found that fascinating. It was a blast to see. Well, okay, two of my paths are coming together,
mm-hmm.
and it was just funny to see that happen, and I just loved it.
Yeah, two of the things that you had a hand in, and they joined together. So so you have a 7 to 8 year interruption in your corporate career in R&D, but it doesn't hurt your career. Talk about that a little bit.
Again, got a call from an old boss of mine, and she said, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I'm just closing up the businesses with my parents on the Dairy Queens." And she goes, "How would you like to come work for me?" I said, "That'd be great." And so that was with Little Caesars. And so moved to Detroit and did that and worked on a lot of different projects. I mean, it was just nonstop. I mean, it was just go. And it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed my boss there, Deb McDaniel, and she was great to work with and work for. So, it was a lot of fun. And so it was so funny because I was actually out on a little fishing outing for a day thing to get out of the office. And so Dana Tilley and Deb took us out to go fishing for trout at this pond. And on the way back, I got this call from a person who had worked for me at IBC, and she said, "Hey, how would you like to come work, be my boss, and come work for DuPont Nutrition Biosciences?" I said, "Sarah, I just joined here. I can't just pick up and leave again." And so she said, "Oh, I understand." And so a couple of weeks later, I get this call. I'm finishing up with a commercial shoot for Little Caesars, and I'm driving through the downtown area and in busy traffic, and it was cloudy and rainy and cold. And a person who I had actually had a lot to deal with from a salesperson, he called me up and said, "Well, you need to come work for us." And I said, "Eddie, I've already told Sarah." And he goes, "I know, I put her up to it." He says, "You need to come work for us." I said, "Oh, Eddie, I'd love to, but unfortunately, I just started here, and I really need to give it, some time here." And he goes, "Well, I'm going to put you on with your new boss." And so he hands the phone over to Kathy Miller, and he goes, "Here's your new boss." So I'm talking with her, and I said, "Hi, Kathy, how are you doing?" And so we went through the conversation. She goes, "I think we need to bring you in for an interview." And I said, "Okay, that's fine. Let's try it out and see." And so I went in and interviewed, and they liked what they saw and what I was able to offer and how I can assemble a team. And so anyway, got hired with DuPont Nutrition Biosciences.
So how long were you at Little Caesars?
Only a year.
We have to stop for a second, because as a recruiter, I will go to companies and they will say to me, that person has been out of the industry for 2 years. That person has been gone for a year. That person, 4 years. And I'm like, they didn't forget what they were doing. They can do that. And they will constantly nitpick about, oh, we can't hire that person because they've been gone a year. You were gone 8, almost 9 years, and you had 2 companies fighting over you.
A lot of that has to do with your reputation within the industry, A. B, it's keeping your networks continually developing. And that's the really important piece here. Keep your networks running, because you never know when your next opportunity is going to come up and be really the right opportunity for you. So that's my point out to everybody who will be listening to this is, keep your networks running. You may step aside for a bit, for maybe a longer time, but people always remember you if you achieved well within the company and you did a lot of what they were looking for. You build this reputation, and that's also the other piece is the reputation piece, because they will actually seek you out and try to find you again to come work for another company. So
I think too many people work with their head down and stay in their lane and don't look up. They don't look at anyone around. And I think the common thread through this whole thing is you don't stay in your lane. And you're constantly looking for ways to help people and get things done for them. Problem solve. Be willing
to challenge the status quo, or just be willing to challenge, and be willing to be challenged as well. Because I think that is another key point here is that, you can't just, like you said, just, stay there with your head down and not being challenged. You need to go out and spread out a little bit, challenge yourself, and be, a person who can convey outward, hey, I think I have a great idea, and this is how I want to do it, and people will listen. You've got the right idea, and you're willing to put your efforts behind it and your reputation and everything, they'll go with it.
Another thing you've mentioned at all these companies, and I think you've had more opportunity to do this than anybody I've ever talked to, these commercial shoots. I think you're throwing this around like commercial shoot, and I don't think people understand what's involved and what your part as a food scientist is in doing commercial shoots.
So they are very involved. I love doing them. There's a lot of prep work that you have to do. You have to have kind of a creativeness about you for it. It's not, limiting, but it's something that you really should have a little bit of a creative view and an eye for things. And so when I was working with the photographers and also the directors for these commercial shoots, I'd always say, well, let me take a look, from behind the camera so I can see what everything looks like. And I can give you an assessment about whether this actually still meets the specifications of what we look for in that product and what it's going to deliver for that product for the consumer. And so I got to work with some really great directors, and actually one of them was the original director for Alien, the movie Alien. And his name is Derek Van Flint, I think, or Lint. Van Flint. Anyway, he was great to work with. He was the director of photography for that film, and I got to ask him some questions about, what was it like to work with Sigourney Weaver, or what was it like to work with a lot of these different actors and actresses, and so it was a blast just to kind of connect with him a little bit. And, he'd let me look at the, behind the camera and view how everything looked. And he said, he pointed out some things that I had not seen before as well. And it was, I learned a lot from the commercial shoots and the photography shoots as well. So,
do you remember which one he was doing?
It was in the Donatos. So it was one of the Donatos commercials that we were running. So it was being shot up in Canada, there in Toronto. just
okay.
the north and east of Toronto, and that was so much fun. I learned so much from that, and working with the food stylists. So you have to really be able to work with the food stylist, and you have to work with the director as well, and the props person to get everything just correct to in the right timing order in order to get that shoot done immediately. So it is quite a coordination between the kitchen to getting the food out to the stage and having it look good still.
Is all the food in the commercials real?
It's all real.
Because I know that in some of the still pictures, they don't have to naturally be completely real.
So ice cream will actually be whipped up Crisco. And it films out looking like ice cream.
Because it will melt under the hot lights and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and I know that in a real film commercial, if someone's eating something, it better be real, because that would be...
Yeah.
I wouldn't eat Crisco ice cream on. I guess they get paid a lot. They might. So what's the difference between a food stylist and a food scientist on a commercial shoot?
So food stylist actually knows a lot about how to style the product and all the little things you have to do to make the cheese pull in a pizza, how to make that work, and or how to take a raw turkey that's still raw. You partially bake it or cook it, and then it's still raw inside, and then you slice it, and then flap that nice looking, what's supposed to be juicy looking. It's still raw. Flip it out, flap it out, and then you steam it, so it will actually look like it's juicy and fully cooked. And that's how you do these different things. So there's these little tricks that you have to kind of understand how these things work. The cheese pulls were really the most difficult piece, because doing a cheese pull and have it work with the cheeses that you're working with in your restaurant don't pull like they do on the commercials. But
what do they do?
You have to use a mixture of other cheeses, and you log it together into a melted piece, kind of stuff it in there, and then into what the slice is, and then you have to heat it up from underneath, and then steam it, and then you can do the camera, and then you have somebody pulling the whole thing out, and it has to have that nice stretch with the strands of cheese there. So it's quite fascinating to see the whole thing. A, B, there's quite a way of being able to a process to make that actually happen, and hopefully you're successful with it. Sometimes you're not, but you have about 20 pizzas right behind it that you can actually do each take, and so it's if there's 20 takes, there's 20 pizzas that you just run through. They
do a lot of editing, so the commercial might be perfect, except the cheese didn't pull right, so they'll edit in a good cheese pull for the commercial. All this to do a 30-second commercial.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long does it take to do a commercial? How many days are you there?
So that took about a week to do. So I was there in Toronto for about a week. Some of my commercial shoots in New York City were about a week long. And when I was at Pizza Hut, I was between commercial shoots in New York City and out in LA at the shooting studio and Pizza Hut had its own shooting studio out in LA as well. So I was traveling back and forth across the country. I'd be in New York City from Monday through Wednesday, and then over in LA from Wednesday evening into Friday, Saturday in the afternoon, running commercial and photography shoots. So, yeah.
So after all these pizzas, are you tired of pizza yet?
No. Love pizza.
No?
Yeah, I make my own.
What's your favorite kind of pizza?
Cheese. I'm a big
cheese pizza?
Fan. Yeah.
Thin or thick crust?
I like both. I'll hand slap out a thick crust for myself, and it looks like a New York style pizza. So the big pizzas like this with the bulbous edge and the thinner center. So, and I hand slap out, make my own dough, and then I hand slap it all out, sauce it all up, cheese it, throw it in the oven with, I put spices all over it, and then throw it in the oven and bake it off, and voila, there you go.
So you like the New York style over the Chicago style?
Yeah, yeah.
And if someone's at your house and they want something on the pizza, you're okay with that?
Oh, yeah. I've made it with pepperoni and other, sausage and other things on there too. So sometimes I get really creative with like vegetables and other things, and I do these flatbreads that are really, really extravagant looking. So and put different, sauce drizzles or reduced balsamic vinegar drizzle over top, and do some fun stuff like that.
All right. Have you ever made a pierogi pizza?
I have not.
Now, you know what a pierogi is, right?
I do know what a pierogi is.
Okay. So pierogi pizza this would go well on a par-baked crust. You saute onions in butter, salt and pepper. So you might put a little butter or olive oil in the crust, but you spread mashed potatoes. Like it. Okay. So you put your mashed potatoes on there like you would tomato sauce, except a little thicker. And then you put all the onions with the butter and the salt and pepper and everything on top of that. And then to make it a pizza, which pierogies don't have cheese, but you got to they do, but they don't have it so you can put cheddar on there if you want, but most people put a mozzarella, maybe a cheddar blend, and you put that on there and you bake it like a pizza. And it is a pierogi, and it is 100% carbs.
That sounds wonderful.
Why has that not gone national? That was a big deal in some of the restaurants in Ohio. Even though pierogies are big in Pittsburgh, Ohio had all the pierogi pizzas.
Oh, interesting.
So you just need mashed potatoes, the onions, and the cheese. And like I said, you don't just put cheddar cheese. I've had them couple with all cheddar. That's just the wrong texture. If you do a blend between mozzarella and cheddar, it's much better. I'm going to have to make one of these.
I've done sliced potato that I parboiled and then put it on the pizza with rosemary and shallots, shaved out shallots and all that. Put that on there and love it.
Yeah, that's too white collar. This is very blue collar.
I'm good with blue collar as well. So,
all right, let's pick up where we left off. So you left Little Caesars and went to DuPont, and tell us about DuPont, because everybody thinks DuPont's a chemical company.
No one really knew what DuPont was all about, and that they had a nutrition biosciences division. So basically, it was DuPont had purchased what was actually Danisco. So Danisco, back in the day, Grinstead, Danisco, they had purchased Soleil, so the soybean manufacturing.
And before that, it was PTI. Before that was Protein Technologies.
Yeah. So they purchased Soleil. I think right before that, though, they purchased Genencor. So Genencor was actually the enzymes. So running like the enzymes that go into soaps and things like that, but they also made food enzymes as well. So then a little bit longer out than DuPont actually acquired Danisco. And so then we all became part of the DuPont Nutrition Biosciences area. And so then after that, then we had actually purchased FMC, and then we merged with Dow. And so the idea was to bring all the food ingredients together. So the cellulosics and alginates and all these other gums and hydrocolloids, everything came over to DuPont Nutrition Biosciences and also from Dow into that. And then it was all broken back up again. And so all the farming pesticides, all that extra stuff, all that stuff went to Corteva. So Corteva was broken up off of that, and so all the farming agricultural stuff. Then it left Dow and DuPont together, and then we broke the two of those apart, and then we were kind of reshuffled around a little bit, but we were still part of DuPont Nutrition Biosciences, and then about 3 years ago, then we did a reverse Morris Trust merger with IFF, so International Flavors and Fragrances. And so DuPont Nutrition Biosciences and IFF came together to create the new IFF. And so we dropped the DuPont Nutrition Biosciences name and became IFF.
Here you are, a bakery guy, shows up at DuPont. What are you working on?
So I'm working on enzymes, and enzymes, emulsifiers, hydrocolloids, so all these different ingredients that are in our portfolio, and working with our customers to create better enzymes and emulsifiers and hydrocolloids for them to be able to utilize in their own operations. So we are number 2 in the enzymes. So we actually own all of our own backbones, enzyme backbones, and then we can manipulate those enzyme backbones to express what we're looking for, whether it be like in strengthening or softening or building up starches or whatever it may be that we're interested in doing for whatever industry that we're working in. So in mine is in bakery, but we also have dairy, we have culinary, we have pet food. So there's all these different all these different application areas that we fall into with the different ingredients that we have in our portfolio. Okay. So we actually, like I said, we're vertically integrated with enzymes, and so I do a lot of my work in enzymes right now. We've developed some new molecules that actually help with strengthening, and they really are the top notch in the industry right now. So we take those enzyme molecules, we blend them together in my lab, and we do a lot of discovery, but then we also run a lot of designs of experimentation on those to create the most optimum blend for strengthening, utilizing all the different strengthening enzymes and oxidative enzymes, as well as dough conditioning enzymes and even softening enzymes. So we create these optimized blends based off of designs of experimentation. And then I've taken them one step further on testing, and so we do called design test to failure. And so we can understand how will this look when we fail it in a bread or cake or whatever it may be in our application work. We have to understand that, because then when a company, one of our customers actually calls and says, hey, we're experiencing this, we've already experienced it in the lab. And so we can see what that looks like and how to troubleshoot for that. And then we can get a immediate answer back to them.
Okay, so this is the first time in your career that you're really in an ingredient company. You're not doing finished products. Yeah. So we don't have any commercial shoots here. We're not doing anything fun like that. So you kind of rattled off a few of the ingredients that you work with. Just for people who have no idea what you're talking about, maybe someone new in the industry or something like that, talk about what an enzyme is, what a hydrocolloid is, and I can't remember the other one that you mentioned. Emulsifier. So go ahead and talk about, like, just briefly what they do and where we use them.
So with enzymes, it's real simple. So they will take a substrate that we're interested in. So it may be a lipid that if we want to convert it over to making a strengthener, that you wouldn't have to use like datum or some sort of emulsifier. You can actually create the same molecules in situ inside like a bread dough. So we're trying to create datum-like molecules in situ in a bread dough, so that we won't have to use like datum and monos and things like that. We can just use enzymes, and so you can remove datum and monos off the label. But we're taking those different enzymes that are strengtheners or lipases, and we are converting the lipids that are natural in not only in the formulation but also in the flour itself, and converting those over to strengthener molecules. And so that's what enzymes do. And we can also soften, so we can actually break down starch in the product to help extend shelf life. So we can actually greatly extend shelf life. If you don't have the softening enzymes in there, you probably would get a shelf life about 5 to maybe if you're pushing it about 10 days. But we can go out to 30, 35 plus days now with softening enzymes and give the manufacturers a much wider range of being able to sell that product and reducing the amount of waste that's going out into the world. So that's what enzymes do. With emulsifiers, so a lot of like cakes and things like that will require emulsifiers because there's different types of emulsifiers. There's an alpha-tending emulsifier that actually gives you that aeration whipping ability for cakes. We have other types of emulsifiers like datums and SSL that help reduce the surface tension between oil and fat, and that's really good because you need to be able to emulsify that oil and fat together to make smaller droplets of oil or smaller droplets of water to help improve the texture and quality of that product. There are other like softening emulsifiers like monos that will help keep the softness of that product initially so that you get the best out of that product in lowering the firming curve for like a bread, say, and you're eating a slice of bread, it lowers that firming curve so you can actually eat it and have it be nice and soft in the initial bite then. Hydrocolloids work from a different point of view. We're trying to manage moisture and do moisture control. So breads love to, because they're only held together by this little bag that has a little twist tie on the one end of it, and a lot of moisture migrates from that product from breads outward, and the bags are just really a dust ruffle on that holds that whole thing together. So there isn't a whole lot that's really protecting other than from particulate of dust and things like that. It's really just there to hold that package together. So you have to be able to manage that moisture inside to extend out the shelf life as well of that bread, because it's going to start drying out. As soon as you get it out, that package is going to start drying out, fairly rapidly. So we use hydrocolloids in that, but we also use in cakes to help maintain moistness and viscosity of the batter for the cake to really perform well in the marketplace.
Which have you enjoyed more? Working at finished good company where you can look and say, I made that pizza, I made that hamburger bun, or are you having more fun now trying to play with all these ingredients?
I miss some of the end product development, so menu management. I miss some of that. It's a very, very high-paced type of environment. Not to say that it isn't here in the ingredient world, but I'm learning a lot more. I've learned a lot more about ingredients and how they function within bakery products, and I can become more creative with that. And when you look at our portfolio across the board, not only the ingredients I've just talked about, which is enzymes, emulsifiers, hydrocolloids, we have all these other things that we work with, like flavors. We have inclusions that are part of the portfolio, which are these little, almost like, what are those roll-out mats of fruit, the fruit roll-ups. So they're
fruit roll-ups.
Yeah, so we make little bits out of that, fruit bits, and it's actually 100% fruit. And so we can make inclusions that have real fruit in them, and that's really fun to work with. The flavors, of course, and then we have another one that's called Powder Pure. And so in the Powder Pure, we actually have the IFF system. It's a patented technology. We can take ugly-looking fruit, and we do that. So we take ugly-looking fruit that doesn't make it to the marketplace, but we can use it, dry it down really, really fast. So within a minute, we can dry all that fruit down and then powderize it, and it can be utilized in a bakery product or whatever it may be. But it keeps all of its nutritional content to it, and it keeps its color. It keeps all the different aspects of that, what that fruit or vegetable was before. It still has that in there. And so you can be really creative with a whole lot of a wider range of that portfolio that we never had before when we were just DuPont Nutrition Biosciences.
Do you get to a finished product with some customers? Do Do you get to walk it all the way to the end?
Yep. So we do end-to-end design. So we work with the customers at the very beginning of the design and then all the way through to the very end. And we will actually help them out in their own manufacturing facilities to help achieve that same quality of what we're trying to achieve from the beginning part of the design work.
Well, without giving any secrets away, can you tell us an example of some products that you may have worked on?
The largest bakery company in the world actually came to us and knew that we were really, really good in our enzymes. And so we helped them with design an enzyme blend for some of their products. And, you see them out there in your territory because they deliver out to that way as well. But they're going to more of a clean label. So able to help design that clean label by removing the datums and monos, all that other stuff out of it so that they can actually clean up the label and then utilize that in their process. So we can help improve that process a little bit more and actually improves the end product and actually looks better than what they had before. So that's one. But we've worked on some of like the cakes and things like that where we'll work with a cake manufacturer and help them with redesign their cake mixes to go back out to the marketplace. And in one particular case, actually they brought their formulation and I said, well, you're using the wrong flour. B, there's some other things that are in your formulation that probably need to be changed out because they're old technologies that we have new technologies to replace that will probably be more cost effective. And there's some other things we can do with the formulation to make it a little bit better for processing at a consumer's kitchen. And so we reworked some of those formulations in the cake mix formulations, and they're successful now. So, which has been really, really helpful.
And they still tasted the same as what their old product tasted like and performed the same way?
They actually perform better and they tasted better because we were able to improve not only on the flavor, but also on the ingredient side of things.
Is this helpful when IFF bought it so you had access to all these flavors and everything?
Yeah, that was very helpful. So the playground just got huge. I call it the playground. So that's what I call my lab is the playground. So
what I've noticed, and I don't know, maybe other people have said the same thing. When IFF buys somebody, merges with somebody, however you want to use that terminology, they always remove the other company's name. So they remove the history. So if you're looking for an old formulation and it says that it was an autumn flavor, if you don't know your history, you don't know that's IFF now.
Yeah, actually Taste Point.
And they just take the name away. And they've done it with everybody. So DuPont wasn't on my radar because I worked with them when they were PTI, when they were Soleil. When they went to DuPont and Danisco, I did a little bit of work, but I hadn't been touched them in a long time. So I remember right now sitting here going, yeah, IFF bought them, but I didn't realize that DuPont's just gone. Like it's not there.
Yeah, DuPont Nutrition Biosciences is gone.
Yeah, just gone.
But our Danisco name still is around. So
is it?
The Danisco sub-brands, Danisco, Grinstead, some of these sub-brands that were legacy from a long time ago are still there, and even Soleil. So you'll see the Soleil name on a ingredient, but you also see IFF on there too. So
yeah, so you throw away all your DuPont nutritional T-shirts and
yeah, the logo's gone. So a lot of that stuff went to Goodwill.
What words of wisdom would you have to somebody who, maybe has struggled with some downsizing and has to go other places, has several jobs in their background? I mean, I just don't think it's as negative as some people think about it because you wouldn't have all the knowledge you have today if you hadn't been to all these places.
Right. So don't think about the negative. There is a shining light out there for you. And as long as you've been able to build up a really good reputation and you have a good networking group that you work with, you utilize LinkedIn, because you can say I'm out looking. There's recruiters, there's other companies that are looking for your talent, and you can't just say, well, this is the end, because that's really not the case. The food science industry is, there's so few of the food scientists right now. You can go out and choose whatever you want, and it's there. And you have to be open, because what you may have thought that this is what you wanted to do, it may not be the course direction of your career to work with. You may have to kind of expand your challenge what you're doing, and go into a new direction within food science. And I encourage young people to not get discouraged if they get downsized out. It's not the end of the world. There may be new opportunities that you hadn't really thought about that you can go explore and be part of that, and maybe learn something else new.
Have you ever had an employer or an interviewer say you've been job hopping and that's a negative?
Actually, there was one that said that, and I can't remember which one it was. They said, well, you've been job hopping. And it's like, well, I don't call that a negative. I call that a positive, because I bring all this vast knowledge with me now. And it's very diverse, and I can help you solve problems much, much better as a job hopper. And because you learn so much from each one of the experiences. And, every different situation has had different problems to solve, and learning from those problems and how to solve them, it's really a lot of fun. I look at it more from the point of view, it's a blast to work in, and you have new situations that may arise daily that you've never thought about before, and how do you solve through that, and make it interesting for yourselves.
The only thing I don't have a comment back for is that they say to me as a recruiter, they'll say, yeah, but what if we fall in love with him and he's doing so wonderful here and he wants to leave and he's only been here 3, 4, 5, or he or she only been here 3, 4, 5 years. And I'm like, my only comeback to that has ever been, well, if you keep them challenged, they'll stay.
Yeah.
But they're so worried. I always tell them, don't worry about that. Wouldn't you rather have 3, 4 years really good time with this person than to have never hired them?
Yeah.
But they kind of get in their head that if they can't have them for 10 or 15 years, it's not worth hiring the person.
Yeah, and I'd have to challenge that, because I think that they're short-sighting themselves on technical know-how, and what can be brought to the table from that person, giving them new opportunities, challenge them. I think there's sometimes the HR people have a very, very narrow focus on things, and they can't see outside the box enough to say, I'm willing to take the risk, and I'm willing to, say, in 3 to 4 years, if you're still not challenged enough, then maybe you should go ahead and go, or make the culture. Maybe you need to make a cultural shift within your organization to make it more challenging for your people. Because if they're not challenged enough, they may go out in droves, and that's not always good for a company either. So the culture has to be within an organization too, and it starts at the very top of getting people to be challenged and enjoying what they do, and a free collaboration type of culture is really important in these organizations, especially when you get into R&D. You really have to have this collaborative efforts, network inside the organization, because if you don't have that, then you're not going to create anything other than a bunch of dismay.
Yeah. I think the one thing I've noticed through this conversation is that you have a lot of good memories.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a lot of fun stories, fun people. You have mentioned more people than most people. They try to keep everybody's name out. And you've mentioned all your friends and all these people you've networked with. And I think that's fabulous. And obviously you've been there 7 years now. So it sounds like you found something that fits your groove right now that you want to keep doing. Yeah,
I really enjoy what I'm doing. I've been challenged all the time, from a professional point of view, but also from what I do out in the lab and how I'm helping and teaching others how to do these things better as well. So it has a lot of great challenges to it, and it's fun.
And you've had a chance to settle down.
Yeah, yes,
stay in one place.
Finally. So, and the organization here actually values what I do, and they value everything that I bring to the table, and I think that's really important because they recognize what I can bring, and they value that, and they've told me that before, and I think that's a wonderful thing to have for your not only your soul but your whole psyche as well. So it really lifts you up.
Yeah. Well, I think I told you when we talked first that one of the things I like to do is having these podcasts is that young people who've never thought about the food science as an option might get some insight from, hearing from people like you. And I know you're very involved in K-State University. So talk about that a little bit before we close.
So once a year, I actually get to teach. So I get to teach the bakery science intercession course. And so I get to work with students and take them through the bakery functions of ingredients in bakery, and more specialized or specific towards like emulsifiers and enzymes. So those are things that are a little bit tougher subjects to try to cover during the year. I can actually do a deep dive with them and help them understand how these things work real well. So we go through that, and then we go through the baking process itself, because a lot of them may have not been in a bakery situation. Some of them have. Some of them did their internships, but some of them may have not been in an internship yet. And so they don't really have an understanding for how the bakery process goes. Then we take them through the evaluation piece, so scoring bakery products, so you can look at what are the defects and how do you correct those defects, when you're out there in the field. So I love teaching, always have. It's one of the highlights of my year is being able to do that. And so I've really enjoyed teaching that course. And then I'm also on the advisory board for K-State. So I'm actually the chairman this year for the advisory board. So I'm really happy about being able to contribute back to that, and being able to talk about programs that we should be considering for the next round of generations that we need to start teaching in food science and baking science as well. So
I would say it's probably very important for the students to hear from an industry professional, because nothing against professors, but sometimes they're teaching, and not from a practical standpoint, because they may have never been in industry, but to have somebody from the industry come in, and I'm sure that your word has a lot of weight for the students.
It all comes back to that reputation.
I met the guy who worked at Hostess, and that people do get excited. It's funny how people get so excited when they find out you talked to somebody who actually ever made a Twinkie or made this, cookie. And I'm like, yeah, but that's okay. But anyways, well, thank you for being here. Thank you for the entertaining conversation. And it's nice to walk down the memory lane with you. And and I know you still have a lot more things to do. Yeah. And working with IFF and helping customers. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you inviting me to this. This has been a fun, couple hours, and I really enjoyed, talking with you and reconnecting and talking about some of the past.
Thank you so much, Guiley. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for being here.